Welcome to the GForce Oberheim SEM. In this video I'll be showing you how the SEM works so that you can use it to its full potential. When you first open the SEM, you'll be greeted with the default preset. To initialize the sound so that we can start from scratch, we're going to press this initialize button here. The SEM has two different screens. The first one here resembles the original SEM synthesizer. To access the rear panel, you can press this flip button in the bottom right hand corner. On the rear panel, you'll find all of the advanced functionality that we've added to the SEM. You can also view both screens at the same time by pressing the Extend button, which opens the synth up like this. If you want to go back to just the single screen view, you can then press this tab again. On the front panel of the SEM, we have two VCOs which are switchable between sawtooth and pulse waves. To turn them on, we use these volume knobs down here in the filter section. Turning the volume knob to the left allows us to get a sawtooth wave. If you want to turn the oscillator off, you can just double click the knob. Over to the right, we get our pulse wave. The same also applies for VCO2. With the oscillator set to pulse wave, we can also change the pulse width, and this knob over here allows us to go from 10% over to the left to 90% over to the right, and everything in between. To return to a 50% square wave, just double click the knob. At the top of our VCOs, we have the frequency knob, which allows us to tune the oscillator. Clicking in the center of the knob and dragging it will allow you to fine-tune the oscillator. Clicking in the outer ring will allow you coarse tuning. And right-clicking and dragging will allow you to step between semitones. This allows for quick and incredibly precise tuning of your oscillators. You can also hard sync the tuning of VCO2 to VCO1 using the sync switch here. Let's turn up VCO2. Now, if we change VCO2's frequency, we can hear the hard sync. The SEM features the renowned multi-mode filter from the original SEM. To change your cutoff, use the frequency knob. You can also add resonance with the resonance knob. The multi-mode filter allows us to seamlessly switch between three filter modes: the low pass and the notch, and the notch and the high pass. The multimode filter also has a band pass, which you switch on using this switch. If we come over to the rear panel by pressing the flip button, we can access filter tracking. The center knob sets the central position from where the tracking happens. In the default position, the filter tracking center point will be middle C. Moving this knob to the right will set the filter tracking central position above middle C, and moving it to the left will set it to below middle C. When the amount knob is set to the center, this will result in no filter tracking. With the center knob in the default position, turning the amount knob to the right will open the filter cutoff for notes above middle C, while closing it for notes below middle C. If we turn the tracking amount to the left, it will reverse that, meaning that the cutoff will close for notes above middle C and open for notes below middle C. In the SEM, we have a number of modulation options, including 2 envelopes. For the envelopes, we have control over the attack time, the decay time, which also controls our release time, and our sustain level. Envelope 1 is hardwired to the VCA, meaning it controls the volume of the synth, but we can also use these 2 envelopes as modulation sources for our oscillators and our filter. To use our envelopes as our modulation sources, we use this switch here, and just move it over to the envelope position. You'll also notice that on VCO 1, it's controlled by envelope 1, whereas with VCO 2 and our filter, we're controlling it with envelope 2. Now that we've set our envelope as our modulation source, we can set what we want it to modulate. On our oscillators, we can either choose to modulate our frequency, or our pulse width. On our filter, we can use envelope 2 to modulate the cutoff frequency. If we turn the modulation knob to the right, we open our filter. If we turn it to the left, we close our filter. We can also modulate all of these things using our LFO by setting the LFO as our modulation source on these switches. So now, if we want to control our VCO1 frequency with the LFO, we would turn this knob to the left. To change the rate of the LFO, we use this knob here. We can also sync it to our DAW or to the tempo that we've set in standalone mode by pressing the sync button. By default, our LFO is set to a triangle wave, but we can change that by heading to the rear panel. In our LFO panel here, we can choose between a triangle wave, a sine wave, a ramp, a half square, a full square, and noise. As you may have noticed, you can change your waveforms here or use this knob here. We can use the intro knob down here to set a delay to the start of our LFO modulation. When the sync button is pressed over here, the intro time is synced to our tempo. If we turn the sync button off, we'll get it in milliseconds. We can also use this re-trigger button here to re-trigger our LFO when we press a key. With our re-trigger button off, our LFO is free-flowing, meaning that the position of our modulation is determined by where we are in our waveform cycle. If we turn the re-trigger button on, it means that the LFO re-triggers whenever we press a key. We can also use velocity as a modulation source, and in our rear panel we have a number of destinations to choose from. We can set it to control our filter cutoff, mode and resonance, our VCO 1 and 2 modulation amounts, our envelope 1 and 2 attack, our amplitude and our VCO levels. By turning any one of these knobs to the right, we'll control above the set parameter, and by turning them to the left, we'll control below the set parameter. Let's use our cutoff frequency as an example. When we turn the modulation amount up, you'll see a yellow corona appearing to the right of our set value. This means that the heavier we play, the brighter the cutoff. If we set this to a negative value, the corona goes over to the left, and that means the heavier we play, the more closed the cutoff will be. We can also use Aftertouch as a modulation source, and we can change our destination using either the arrows here or by right-clicking and getting a list. Possible modulation destinations are our filter cutoff, our amplitude, our oscillator 1 and 2 modulation, and our LFO rate. Let's modulate our filter cutoff with our Aftertouch. Like with our velocity, if we turn the amount knob to the right, we're going to be opening up the filter as we press down our Aftertouch, and we can now see that a blue corona has appeared to show us that the filter will be opening. If we turn the amount to the left, it will close our filter. We can also modulate multiple parameters at the same time using our Aftertouch. So let's set our Aftertouch to open up our filter frequency and to add some LFO frequency modulation to oscillator 1 at the same time. If we use both velocity and Aftertouch to control a single parameter, we get this blended corona which turns green. The green area here means that it's being controlled by both our velocity and our Aftertouch, and then the blue area here means that it's just being controlled by our Aftertouch. If we were to turn our Aftertouch amount down, and then turn our cutoff up, We would have green where both our modulation sources are controlling it, and we would have yellow where just our velocity is controlling the modulation. On the rear panel of the SEM, you'll find VCO3. Not only does this give us a third oscillator to use, but it also gives us a range of modulation options. In our filter section here, we can use this knob to set the level of VCO3. If we turn the knob to the right, we get pink noise. If we turn it to the left, we hear our waveform. To set the wave shape of VCO3, we use this switch here. We can either have a sawtooth wave, a sine wave, or a square wave. As with our other VCOs, we can change the pitch of VCO3 using the frequency knob here, with fine tuning in the centre of the knob, coarse tuning on the ring around the edge, and stepping between semitones by right-clicking. We can also use VCO3 as a modulation source for our VCO1, VCO2, and our filter. This allows us to use VCO3 to create FM-style sounds. We can also change the modulation source from our waveform to our pink noise by using this switch. We can also use VCO3 as a second LFO. When the LFO rate switch is set to off, we're operating in audio rate. If we switch it to on, we're now using VCO3 as an LFO. Let's modulate the filter cutoff. We can also sync it to our tempo using the sync position on the same switch. Just like with LFO1, we can re-trigger this LFO on key presses by turning the re-trigger switch to on. We can also use the intro knob to delay the start of the LFO. When sync is on, this is synced to our tempo. If we turn sync off, this will be controllable in milliseconds. We can also control the amount of VCO3 modulation using our envelopes with this envelope modulation switch here. When we set this switch to be controlled by one of our envelopes, that means that the modulation amount is going to follow the envelope shape. In this example, our frequency cutoff is being modulated by VCO3, but as you can hear, it starts right away and then decays. We can of course set this quicker or longer. We can introduce some attack. And we can also set a level for it to sustain at. This will also happen for any modulation destination that we set to be controlled by VCO3. So let's set up some vibrato on VCO1 that will just die off nice and quickly. As you can hear, we get that initial burst of vibrato followed by a sustain level where we don't hear much vibrato at all. In the SEM, we have two effects units available, delay and reverb, which are accessible from the rear panel. When we're in flip view, you'll find the delay and reverb on the left-hand side. When you're in extended view, you'll find them on the right-hand side. To demonstrate these effects, I've created a very quick sound. Let's start with the delay. To turn it on, you can use the mix knob. As this is a stereo delay, we can set the left and right times independently. We can also sync these to our tempo using the sync button here. We can then set these independently. So let's set the left channel to an eighth note and the right channel to a quarter note. We also have a feedback control which sets how much the delay repeats. There's also a high-pass filter which allows you to tame the low end. To turn the reverb on, we use the mix control. Let's set it to 50%. You'll find a size control which sets the size of the room from a small room to an incredibly large hall. We've also got control over our decay time from very short to incredibly long. We also have a filter control. If we turn it to the left, we can remove some of the top end and darken our sounds. If we turn it to the right, we can remove the low end. We also have an effects lock button, which allows you to keep your effects whilst changing presets. The SEM features both an arpeggiator and a sequencer, and you can access these from the left-hand side of the front panel. To demonstrate it, I've set up this quick sound. To turn on the arpeggiator, set the arpeggiator state knob to on. When the arpeggiator state knob is set to on, you'll hear the arpeggiator when you hold down your keys or when you program some notes into your DAW. If you turn the same switch to hold, this means that it will hold the arpeggiated notes even when you remove your hands from the key. Using the rate knob, we can set the rate of the arpeggiator, ranging from 1 note every 2 quarter notes all the way up to 1/64th. You can also set the number of octaves that the arpeggiator plays across using the octaves control, ranging from 3 octaves up to 3 octaves down. We can also set the direction that the arpeggiator plays in using the mode control. By default, this is set to play, which plays your notes in the order that you press them. You can also set it to up, which plays your notes upwards. Down. Up, down, which plays your notes upwards and then down again. Up and down, which is the same as the previous mode, but plays your first and last notes twice. And then random. By pressing this tab here, we can also access the advanced functions of our arpeggiator and sequencer, including buttons that allow you to transpose your arpeggiator by a third, and by a fifth. You can also set the amount of swing using the swing control. The SEM also features 2 sequencers. To start using them, we can set our mode to sequence 1. Each sequencer has 32 steps and allows you to record the notes in individually, step by step. You can also add rests and holds using the rest and hold buttons. To record a sequence, press the record button and then play a note. You'll see that when I play a note, the steps move up incrementally. I can then add a rest by pressing the rest button, play some more notes, and then tie that particular note using the hold button. To stop recording, press the record button again. Now, when I press a key, it will play back my sequence. This will also transpose across whatever key I play. To record sequence 2, I can press the record button here and then record my sequence in. As soon as I press record again, it'll move the mode to play sequence 2, meaning that I can now play back my second sequence. I can now use the mode knob to alternate between my sequences. If I want to export either of my sequences, all I need to do is click and hold on either of the MIDI buttons and then drag the file that appears. This will export the sequence as either a MIDI file, or I can drag and drop it straight into my DAW. If I like my sequencer or arpeggiator settings and I want to retain them whilst changing presets, I can press the Art Block button and then skip to the next preset. Lastly, by setting the Arpeggiator state knob to DAW start, it will allow you to synchronize your arpeggiator or recorded sequences to your DAW. When you press play in your transport, the sequence or arpeggiator will start playing, and when you turn your DAW off, it'll stop. The keyboard controls allow us to control how we play the SEM. Firstly, we can use the transpose buttons to transpose between 2 octaves down and 2 octaves up. We can also switch between monophonic playing, where the note re-triggers with every key press, or legato playing. We can also use the assignment to choose our note priority, selecting between low note priority, latest note priority, and high note priority. We also have 2 Portamento controls that allow us to control the amount of time it takes for the notes to glide between each other when played. The global Portamento controls the Portamento for all 3 of our oscillators. The VCO2 control allows us to offset the Portamento rate of VCO2 against VCO1 and VCO3. If we turn it to the right, we'll get a longer Portamento value for VCO2 only. If we turn it down, we'll get less Portamento value on VCO2, and we can even remove Portamento from VCO2 altogether. We also have dedicated vibrato controls, which allow us to add vibrato to our sounds without using LFO1 or VCO3. To turn it on, turn up the vibrato amount. You can then use the rate control to set the rate of the vibrato. We also have tuning controls. The global tuning allows you to set the tuning of the instrument from 430 Hz up to 450 Hz. We also have a pitch bend range, which allows us to set the range of our pitch bend wheel. At the moment, it's set to 2 semitones. This ranges all the way up to 48 semitones. Down here we have our volume controls. The SEM level allows us to control the volume of the synth being sent dry into our effects chain, while the master volume control allows us to set the overall volume of the instrument after the effects. The SEM has an undo and a redo button, meaning that if you want to A/B changes, or if you have made a mistake and you want to undo it, then you can use these buttons to do so. If I change a parameter here, and then press the undo button, you'll note that that goes back to the original point. If I press redo, it'll go back again. Everything in the SEM can be controlled with your MIDI controller using CC mappings. To set that up, we're going to enter the CC editing mode by pressing this button here. To assign a CC mapping to any parameter, just click that parameter and then move your controller. You'll now see that the cutoff frequency is assigned to CC41. I can then do the same with any other parameters. If I want to get rid of a mapping, I can just double click it. If I want to get rid of all of the mappings, then I can just press the clear button. You will get a warning so that you can't accidentally delete all of your CC mappings. To do so, press yes, and you'll now see that all of the mappings have been removed. If I now want to reassign, I can. To leave CC mapping mode, just press the CC button again, and you'll now see that I can control the synth with my controller. So now you know how to use the GForce Oberheim SEM, and we hope that you have fun creating your own sounds with it. Thanks for watching.